You making time in your day. I know you've met with teachers, and some of you may leave yet to go to meet with teachers, but the intention of this program, which we've done for years in the chapel here on Parents Weekend, is to provide as much information for you about this admissions game, and I wish I didn't have to call it a game, but it's sort of become a little dance or a game. We always bring in 4 admissions people who deal with our students. We try to get a liberal arts place, and we couldn't quite nail one down this year, but we got 4 people that we deal with a great deal. We have the University of California system represented by actually a lady who works with some of our test prep stuff, and she's an expert because she went to the UC system and played point guard and did some things there. So between the 2 of us, we will try to share what we know about the UC system. About half of our students apply there, so I know it's a really important place. We also have George Washington University. That'll be the 2nd school that we visit on the East Coast trip. We always have 4 or 5 students there. It's a private school in Washington, D.C. We have University of Arizona, which is probably our most important, popular destination for out-of-state public schools. We've got scads of kids who are interested in Arizona. A lot of people are there. Maybe Boulder might be a close second. They go back and forth, but very popular places for our kids. And then we have Emory University, a place that I visited this past spring. They were kind enough to fly me in, and I spent several days visiting schools in the Atlanta area. It was part of what they call the Peachtree Tour, and I sort of collared the guy there to come and talk with us. We have some of our students apply there. It's a very difficult school, and it's the South, so it's not a real big place on the radar screen for our kids, but our serious, very serious, ambitious students will try to go to those types of schools in the University Athletic Association, which they are part of. It's in Atlanta. It's a little more selective school. So the schools are a little different, and we want to shape and delineate the differences amongst those schools, but we also want to provide you with some information about this process. We have 2 seniors and 2 juniors, 4 people who are in different stages of this process, and they're going to ask some questions, some standard questions, but they're also will have some surprise questions for us. And then at the end of this discussion and conversation, we will have some moments for you to ask questions that if we don't cover the things you're interested in, and then we will break, and you can talk with both the students and the college reps on your own about specific things. And one last thing, Kim and her partner from Revolution Prep are here, and they're the people that have been serving us for the last few years in terms of our SAT test preparation. So they're also available to talk to you about that aspect of what we're doing, which is a good reminder. Turn the cell phones off. I remember to turn mine off. I don't want my wife calling me here in the midst of things, especially because we have a TV camera going on here, and this is going to be part of the series that we've done this last year or so. It's on Comcast Channel 26, College Prep for You. So this will be a canned presentation. You'll be able to see, perhaps see yourselves later on TV. We haven't picked a date yet for it, but it's one in our series of year-long seminars that we use to provide information both to our parents and parents who are away from us. So we send these and give you a link so you can see these a little bit later. So I want to get started here. Our panelists are going to introduce themselves first. Our youngsters will tell you what role they play, who they are, what they do on campus, a little bit about themselves academically and outside of the classroom. And then they're going to be firing the questions at the adults. The adults will introduce themselves briefly and then talk about their institution as a type of institution. And remember, our goal is to separate these different opportunities so that you make the right match, the right decision for your son or daughter. And then we'll get started with the questions and see how we go from there. So again, thank you for being with us. And Brooke, you're up.
Hi, my name is Brooke Palmieri. I'm in 11th grade. I like to make films. I'm into film and cinematography. I like to bike for sports, and I'm interested in film and sciences. I like to write fiction, and that's about it for me.
My name is Kat Kavner. I'm a junior also at Stevenson, and I'm really interested in English and history, but I also like math and science and French as well. So I enjoy the academics here, and I'm playing tennis right now, and I think I'm going to take up lacrosse in the spring. So I think that's it for me.
I'm Clayton Callender. I guess that makes me the first of the 2 seniors that are going up today. I'm kind of in the middle of the admissions process, and we're applying early admission to a lot of schools, and it's kind of intense and it's kind of hard. But I'm captain of the cross country team. I'm also going to be captain of the soccer team later this year. I do a lot of sports, and this is my 2nd year as a boarder here at Stevenson School. So.
Hi, I'm Laura McCoy, and I'm a senior day student from Carmel Valley. And I play water polo, basketball, and softball, and I'm also on student council and senior forum. I like to write. I've recently gotten into journalism, and so that's something that I've sort of started exploring. I've also gotten really interested in business and taking AP Econ, love that class, so we'll see if I go into business maybe later in life. So.
Hi, my name is Jill Gooley, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I can't wait to answer your questions and give you some insight into how this process works. I represent George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and I live out here in California in Los Angeles and work with nearly every student that applies to GW from the state of California, which is our 4th largest feeder state. We're a university that's located right in the heart of downtown Washington, D.C., 4 blocks from the White House, across the street from the State Department, the World Bank, Watergate Complex, the Kennedy Center, IMF, K Street, the Smithsonian Museums are 8 blocks away. You get the picture. We're right in the heart of downtown Washington, D.C. And my colleague Doug is going to talk. We're very similar schools, GW and Emory, so he's going to talk about the research university. In the absence of a liberal arts college, I told David that I would talk a little bit about liberal arts. I attended Mount Holyoke College, which is a women's college in central Massachusetts. I've also worked for admissions offices at Pitzer College, which is one of the Claremont schools in Claremont, California, and a school called Skidmore College in upstate New York. So any of you Stevenson actually reminds me a lot of the liberal arts experience in that it's a small school. The classrooms are what's the average? 15 to 1. So all classes at liberal arts colleges are going to be incredibly small. They're much more discussion-based versus seminar lecture style. The relationships that students have with their professors, there's really a spillover into the social community outside the classroom. And that's not to say that doesn't happen at any large school, because I certainly know that does happen at GW, but that is really the hallmark of a small liberal arts education. And the breadth and the diversity of academic study is pretty broad, so students do get exposure to a lot of different academic disciplines. Liberal arts colleges have nearly everything that mid to large size universities have, with internships, study abroad, research opportunities. It's just a smaller setting, and for a lot of students that's incredibly appealing. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Doug Hartog. Thank you all for having us here today. I think this will be certainly exciting and fun, hopefully informative for you all. I work at Emory University and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. How many people have been to Atlanta? Okay, good. So the airport doesn't count. Airport doesn't count, but you know that we wear shoes and we have indoor plumbing and electricity in the southeast and all that good stuff. I come out here sometimes and people are like, what's the South like? And you know, it's okay. I think Jill did a good job of talking about the liberal arts. I went to Washington and Lee University, which is a small liberal arts college in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, and have done work at a major state university for grad school, and then came to work at Emory, which has a little bit of both to it. We're middle-sized, kind of like GW. We're about 5,500 there, but about 9,700. And we are in Atlanta, Georgia. We are just 5 miles from downtown Atlanta, so we're not on city blocks. We're in a residential neighborhood on 630 acres of property, so the students get a suburban type feeling, but all the benefits of being in a major city. And we offer a liberal arts education as well, where there's quite a bit of ownership in what you want to experience from day one, whether it's what you want to pursue in the classroom, what you want to be involved in the community. But I think one thing that a research university really opens up to the students are the opportunities to take what you're learning in the classroom and use them. Use that education in a real and practical way, whether it's doing internships, whether you're doing research. There are labs, there are world-class museums on research university campuses, there are wonderful archives, they're often affiliated with healthcare systems. So whether you're interested in the sciences or the humanities or the social sciences, I think you'll find unique ways to take what you're learning in the classroom and apply it in a research lab, whether you're working with a professor on some of their, I think, cutting-edge major research, or you're getting a grant from the college office to pursue your own original research going into your junior and senior year. Same goes for the benefit of being in a city with internship opportunities. You know, major cities are going to offer plenty of business internships, but you may pursue government. You may pursue an internship with a law firm or an advertising agency, or we say CNN in Atlanta, or the President Carter's Carter Center. And I think that when you look at major research university campuses in major metropolitan areas, they're wonderful ways to complement what you're learning in the classroom, to really to take what you're learning and make it more practical, make it more relevant, and then bring those firsthand real experiences back to the classroom and allow for that liberal arts discussion to then take hold and take you to the next level. So I'm happy to talk about small liberal arts or major research university. So whatever you have questions, look forward to answering them. Thanks.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, I used to be a second grade teacher, so I hope I don't yell too loud. My name is Naomi Schoenhals, and I'm the Regional Director for Northern California, Oregon, and Washington admissions for the University of Arizona, and I'm actually based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the University of Arizona is located in, well, I think it's beautiful Tucson. Maybe not as beautiful as Pebble Beach, but it's still beautiful. We're a large public out-of-state institution. We are now ranked in the top 20 for research institutions in the United States. We have about 30,000 undergraduate students from every state in the country, and this last year we actually had our largest entering class. We had about 6,700 students, and I'm pleased to say that 5 of our new Wildcats are actually from the Stevenson School. We are known for many things. We have over 100 majors at the university. So one of the benefits of going to a large school is there's definitely something for everybody. We definitely have the internship opportunities, an active career services center, a large study abroad program. Some of the programs that we're known for, and I know students from Stevenson have gone into our business school. We're now ranked in the top 20 in the country for that. And we're also known for our fine arts, like musical theater and dance programs are strong, and also engineering. And if any of you have followed the Phoenix Mars mission, we are the research institution that's involved in that right now. They're trying to figure out the viability for life on Mars. So students interested in space exploration have also been coming to the University of Arizona. We're a big sports school, so for students who either want to try to get onto a Division I team or just enjoy sports, that's another reason that students would come to the University of Arizona. Large public institutions oftentimes offer a lot of opportunities, as I said before. One thing I think that's nice about the University of Arizona in particular, and I know some of the other large institutions as well, is the acceptance rate is fairly high. They're not what are called highly selective institutions. So oftentimes more than 50% up to maybe 80 or even 90% of students are offered admission, and they're going to get a real good, solid education. So that's all I have right now, and I'm welcome to talk more about either the University of Arizona or just if you're thinking about attending a large public institution. I myself am not an alum of the U of A, but I went to one of the UCs, so I can also talk about that. Thank you.
Hi, and good morning. My name is Kimberly Buffum, and as Dave said, I'm here to represent the UC systems. I also work with Dave and the students here at Stevenson to provide test prep with Revolution Prep. And I'm here today to answer any questions that you may have regarding the UC system. I went to UCSD, and played on the women's basketball team for 4 years and was very involved in campus life. So would love to share with you my personal experiences as well as my knowledge about the UC system in general and the admissions process in terms of getting into that. So I will leave it at that and answer any questions that come up today.
We are led to believe that each year is more difficult than the last for selectivity and admissions. How will this affect Stevenson applicants to these very competitive schools? That's directed to Kimberly Buffum.
Thank you. Yes, it is getting more and more competitive, but one thing I'll speak about the UC system is that students that at least meet the minimum requirements to get into the UC are guaranteed admittance into one of the campuses. It might not be to the one of their choice, but students that at least meet the minimum requirements will be guaranteed admittance to the UC system. So although it may be becoming increasingly competitive at certain schools, I think the UC system does a great job of being accessible to all students that have kind of covered their bases in their high school performance.
I think from a more highly selective admission viewpoint, because we don't have any type of guaranteed admission, that you're right, I think it is becoming more challenging each year with more students applying to school and more qualified students applying to these great schools. I think generally as a student that if you're going to do something, do it well. I believe that you really need to continue to challenge yourself in the classroom and to work hard. I think if you do that here at Stevenson, you'll have a lot of success in this process. I think you have to be realistic and continue to do your research and find schools that are appropriate for you, to really spend time thinking about what your criteria and your expectations are of your college experience, and then to find schools that match that. If you apply to schools that are all choice schools, schools where you know you'll be happy, you can't go wrong in this process. It won't matter which ones you get into and which ones you may not have as much success, because you've done your research, you know you'll be happy, you've applied to the right schools for you, and I think you'll ultimately be happy with your college decision. I also think the presentation is becoming increasingly important, as everything has become increasingly important in highly selective admissions. I think the time and the thought and the energy that you put into your application, that you're prepared to talk about yourself and prepared to talk about the school that you're applying to, are increasingly important as we try to separate equals in this process. And so the more that we can learn about you, the more reflective you are, the more thoughtful you are, and the more, I think, thorough that you are in the application process, the more success you'll have as you get into a more competitive admission process.
I'd like to just follow up a little bit and hopefully not belabor the points that have already been made. Yes, it is becoming increasingly more selective, and as GW, and I know that the other schools I've worked for as well, we're not just looking at data. Data is just one boring part of the entire application process. It's numbers, it's grades, it's the courses you're taking, it's your GPA, it's your testing. That tells us nothing about what kind of match you are for the university. And I think that Doug is right. You have to be very realistic about where you're looking and where that school sits in terms of their data and what that might mean in terms of your chances of getting in. But your voice is incredibly important in this process. GW, for example, is not the right place for everyone. And I read applications all the time from students who have the best data, who I truly believe have not thoughtfully considered why they're looking at GW and why they think that we're going to be a good match. So your voice is a big part of this process. Every application at GW, and I can't speak for any of the other schools here, gets read from page 1 to page end. We don't kind of crunch the numbers and then make a decision about whether we're going to continue reading that application. We really do put a lot of thought into match. So yes, we are more selective, but we reach for students that we believe are gonna be a good match.
Okay, so while we're on the topic of numbers and testing, I know that the SAT and the ACT is something that prospective students, both juniors and seniors, worry about. And Laura and I were talking about the differences between the SAT and the ACT while we were walking over here. And I came up with the question, I've applied to quite a few schools. Well, actually, not quite a few. One or two schools that I got the impression that they strongly just discouraged that a student take the ACT and prefer the SAT. Does the ACT or SAT have any reflection on what you think of a student and how you respect those scores when they apply to your school?
No, we're happy to, we say we'll take either, and we're happy to take either. And I'll also point out that there are a lot of schools, Pitzer College being one of them, where I worked, where they're testing optional. There are a lot of fantastic schools out there where you can apply and get a wonderful education and not have to take, Mount Holyoke, the school that I attended, is another one that recently went testing optional. So there are options out there.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't matter to us if you take the SAT or the ACT. We're just going to take what's going to most benefit the student. You know, with this whole score choice thing going on with the College Board, I think any admission office that reviews applications holistically, that really takes the time to climb inside of the application and try to get to know the student, is also going to do everything they can to you know, find what is best about the student and draw that out and figure out how they're going to really contribute to our academic community and to school community. And so, you know, we're going to take the best SAT scores, whether it's the best math, the best critical reading, and the best writing, or the best ACT composite, but those may be, those SATs may be from different sittings, those individual test scores, and we don't really combine them. We're looking at everything individually. I think when we get into the combination of the three scores, that's really more for maybe public consumption, because we're going to look at everything very individually and know that, you know, each student's going to have strengths and weaknesses, and we want to make sure that we are really considering what's in your children's best interest. So it doesn't matter if it's the SAT or the ACT. Some people will do better on achievement-based test, and some on the SAT.
For the University of Arizona, we'll accept either the ACT or the SAT. I often suggest to students to take both tests, because I work with many students, for whatever reason, they test better on one than the other because they test at different knowledge bases, and the style of testing is different. We do not require the subject test, but I still think that students should take that, because there are definitely schools out there that do require that. And now at the University of Arizona, we also do not require an ACT or an SAT test, though a student is not eligible for any merit scholarship money unless an ACT or an SAT score is on file. And we don't use the writing, and there are quite a few schools still that don't use the writing test on the new SAT as one of the admission criterion. We use that just for English placement at the University of Arizona.
So the UC system calculates a UC score, and they view the SAT and the ACT plus writing in the same light, but we do require 2 subject tests to be taken. So those are the testing needs to get into UC.
Okay, so I was definitely an ACT person. My score was over 200 points higher on the conversion charts. So definitely recommend, try both.
Very common among women that the ACT is higher.
I don't know what it was, but I 200 points better, and that's a big jump. So my question is some schools, you know, on the thing, on the application it says, you know, SAT scores and the ACT scores. If my ACT scores are, do I have to put my SAT scores on the application if I'm not as proud of them as my ACT? Just leave it blank?
Oh yeah, I think you choose what you want to submit to us. So yeah, if you feel that you just want to include one composite that you took in the fall of your senior year and leave out the one that you did in your junior year, that doesn't matter to us. Most of us are gonna require the official testing be sent to us anyway.
Okay, I have a question. So Brooke and I just took the PSAT last week, and so what exactly, like, what does it matter? Like, do you look at that score, or if we do poorly, do you discount it, or if we do really well, does it matter a lot? It's for anyone who wants to take it.
We won't look at that score, but hopefully you did really well so you can become a National Merit Scholar.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. We don't use the PSAT as part of the admission process. How are y'all feeling about the college search as seniors?
It's definitely something that when I first started out on the college search, what I did at least is I had a few really general criteria that I was looking for. I wanted a college in a city, and I wanted a college that had a campus in a city. So by doing that, I narrowed choices way down from anywhere in the United States to just on the East Coast, in a city, and with a campus. So, basically by doing that, it makes it like there's a large amount of colleges in the United States that will fit. You know, say you want to be in engineering, there's hundreds and hundreds of colleges. But by doing something like that, which I highly recommend, you're able to just narrow it down to colleges that you know you'll have a fun time at and not only just learn things at.
My college search kind of began my sophomore year during the same break. I've kind of been everywhere. I'm looking more outside of California because I think I want to live here the rest of my life, so I kind of want to experience something new. I've done the whole Boston to Middlebury in Vermont to New Hampshire to, let's see, last fall I flew into Chicago, saw Notre Dame, Northwestern, drove down to Tennessee and saw Vanderbilt. I mean, so I've kind of been all over, but I think what's helped is knowing what kind of school you're interested in. I know that I want a middle-sized school between like 8 to 12, 15,000, and I want, you know, something. I really want a campus. I don't want, you know, roads going all through the campus. I really want it to feel like a school, and that's just what I'm looking at. And so I really was able to, you know, research the schools that fit that image that I had in my mind. And I think the College Center was great helping with that, you know, finding different schools and talking to alums. There's teachers here that are alums of the schools that I'm applying to, and just, you know, kind of getting a sense of what kind of schools you want. And so I think that's kind of the big thing, is kind of narrowing it down. You know, what size do you want? Do you want in a city? Do you want suburban? Do you want in the middle of nowhere? I mean, everyone has something different. So I think that's the big key, is finding out what you're interested in, planning early, and doing your trips early.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that you all have gone about this process in the right way. You really have to get out and get a feel for what these places are like. You know, you can read about them in the books and in the collateral that's sent out by our offices, but I think to really get a sense of what the personality of a place is, you really need to do your best to try to get out and visit or talk with students or faculty, and you guys are doing that, so that's great. Good examples.
Okay, I think I have another question. Laura and I are just finishing kind of the early decision and early action applications. They're kind of due in, what, 2 weeks? Yeah, definitely the workload just picked up for us this weekend. But I was wondering if a student applies early action and there's a student with the exact same criteria and numbers and I guess personality that you're looking for, and he applies just regular admission, is there preference given to the student that applies early action to your school?
Early action and early decision are very, very different kinds of programs. In case all of you aren't familiar, early action, you're not bound, you're not committed to having to enroll at that school. Early decision, you do sign something that says, if admitted, you will withdraw applications from all other colleges. I've never worked at an early action school. I can say from my experience at the schools where I've worked, there is an advantage to applying early decision in terms of the percentage of admit. Students are basically saying to us, you are my top choice. I want to be there. I think that you are above any place that I've looked at, the best match for me. And any school wants a student who wants them. And so I can speak in terms of early decision. I do believe that based on what I know about the schools that I've represented, that there is a slight advantage with early decision. What I don't like, and when I talk to audiences, I'll ask how many of you are applying early decision, and I get a lot of hands that are raised. And then I ask the student, you know, do you know where you're applying? And half the hands go down. You should only apply early decision if you know that's where you want to be. Otherwise, I think applying regular and keeping all those options open is going to play out really nicely as well. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. No, I think that, I mean, that's a great question. I think we are also early decision. My colleague at SMU described early action and early decision really well. He said early action is more like dating, where you're out there, you're kind of going on a couple dates, you're getting to know one another, you're kind of keeping your options open, though it may work out, it may not. And early decision is more like marriage. You know, you've really done your research, you think this is something that's a good fit and a good match, and you're gonna stick with it for the long haul. So I always thought that was a funny way of thinking about it. But you know, I think part of it will depend on how many students the school is enrolling through early decision. What percentage? You know, at Emory we're about a third of the student body. So I think the advantage is that as a school we're committing to enrolling about 30% of the student body through early decision. I think if you're a qualified candidate at early decision, you're likely a very qualified candidate at regular decision and vice versa. And I do think that it's really important that before you go into that binding early decision agreement that you are 100% sure that that's the place for you. If you're not, keep your options open. Because, you know, if you've done your research and you're applying to schools that you're qualified for, you're going to have options. And you know, some schools, if they're admitting 60 and 70% at early decision, then yeah, it becomes more of a challenge for regular decision. But schools that are admitting, you know, less than a third of the students through early decision are admitting way more students during regular decision than they are early. You look at the acceptance rates, I think that can get kind of confusing because you have fewer applying for a larger percentage of the class. But I think at the end of the day, you have to be able to do the work in the classroom. And if we put someone in the classrooms that aren't prepared, we've done them a real disservice. So while there is some flexibility, I think it'll really depend on the school and how they take, how many students they enroll through early.
Okay, so like speaking of advantages in getting in, how do you weigh the legacy factor in your respective schools and the admissions process?
Well, we value the legacy applicants in our process. We're a private school. Our community extends beyond the campus, and we hope that people will keep a close connection with the university throughout their lives. And so we often know that you know, students that are coming to the campus as legacy applicants or matriculants share the same values with the university. Their family has really invested, I think, themselves in the school, and there's great potential for success. In the admission process, I think, you know, in a highly selective admission process, you have to be a competitive applicant. Everybody does. Legacy admissions will become part of the process. We're looking to enroll a well-rounded student body. We want great athletes and great musicians and actors and researchers and writers and people that are going to contribute. And legacy is one of those kind of tip factors that we'll use in the admission process. If we're looking at students that are maybe equally prepared, and one of them is a legacy applicant and one is not, the legacy is certainly going to help them in the process. But it's part of the process. It's not the process. And but again, I think each school will look at their legacy admissions a little bit differently.
At the University of Arizona, it is a question on the application, and it's a very minor consideration in the entire admission process. We do what's called holistic or comprehensive review, but it certainly is a question that's asked, and since we asked the question, it means it is of some importance to us, but minor importance.
The UC system also does comprehensive review, so much like the University of Arizona, it is on the application, but like Arizona is a small piece of it. So.
Okay. I have a question about, something that's, I'm sure, on a lot of our minds is financial aid. I mean, the costs of schools are just booming right now, and the economy and everything. So how do your different financial aid systems work? Are you blind? Do you meet 100% of need-based? And just how that whole system works, if you guys could elaborate on that, would be great.
GW is an incredibly expensive school. Our total costs are about $54,000 a year. Tuition, room, board, flights back and forth, expenses for activities, meals. It's about $54,000 a year. The good thing is that it's set. So we have something called fixed tuition, which means that the tuition a student and family are paying their first year remains consistent all 4 years and a 5th year if needed. So we never increase tuition a dime, a penny, through those 4 years or that 5th year if a student chooses to stay on for a master's degree or even just decides to take a year off to, like a lot of our students do, run a presidential campaign or help to do that. 65% of students at GW received financial aid last year, the average package being $30,000. If a student receives a financial aid package their first year, they are guaranteed to receive at least that amount of money all 4 years and a 5th year if needed. All students are automatically qualified or considered for merit money simply by completing their application. And those packages range between $5,000 and $25,000 last year. About 15% of our student body does receive them. So the great thing about the way we do financial aid is it's transparent. There's no guesswork. What you see it with your admission package and your financial aid admit letter, you know what the costs are going to be for 4 years. There's no guesswork. So I think in terms of the economy, that piece is really important for a family to be able to sit down, compare offers of financial aid, and make a really informed decision about whether that's affordable for the family, given this economy and given what's happening over a 4 or 5 year period.
Yeah, we are certainly, I think, committed to access to college, and with the soaring cost of college, I think we're committing a significant amount of university funds to students to make it possible for them to attend and enjoy their experience and not leave with great debt on their shoulders. We're need blind in the admission process, which means that we will admit students based on what they've accomplished in the classroom, what we think they're going to contribute to the community, not considering their ability to pay. We'll admit who we think is best for Emory and then figure out a way for them to afford it after we've admitted them. Now, you have to apply for need-based aid, and about 66% of our student body receives financial assistance to attend. Our average packages are in the same range as GW. I think, we meet 100% of demonstrated need as well. And we've got some unique programs out there for families with assessed incomes less than $100,000 that will replace replace loans with grants or cap the amount of institutional loan a student can take out at $15,000. But I think with the economy, with endowments probably shrinking, we haven't seen exactly the impact to our endowment yet, or it hasn't been released to us. Our president did issue, a statement, an email to the community that we would continue to, while we're going to have to, I'm sure, tighten our belts in some areas, and everybody's going to have to work with a little bit less within each department on campus, we're going to continue to fund what's important. That's financial aid, the merit scholarships at Emory through the Emory Scholars Program, which you must be nominated by your school for to compete for, and they range from 2/3 tuition through full cost of attendance. Those are endowed scholarships, so that money will always be there. And we'll continue to put money towards our research and towards our faculty so that the student experience doesn't change that much, and so that students will still be able to attend Emory. But we're going to look at financial aid in a renewable way each year. If your family wins the lottery, we'll probably expect you to pay a little bit more. If you have a sibling enroll in college or the economy really affects your income, we're going to adjust our need-based packages so that they do meet your needs and meet 100% of demonstrated need.
Well, with the University of Arizona, like any large public out-of-state institution, of course, there is that cost differential. Since your students, I'm assuming most of you, how many of you are California residents? All of you? Okay. So if you send your student to an out-of-state public institution, there is that cost differential between in-state and out-of-state tuition. The University of Arizona is still considered a best value institution. Right now it's costing about $27,000 for the first year, and that includes tuition and fees, and then also room and board. And I know the other schools, I'm thinking, when students apply to the University of Arizona, they also often apply to, as David said, to Colorado Boulder. Also, University of Oregon is another popular choice. University of Washington, though a bit more selective, has also become a fairly popular choice. And those are a bit more expensive, but not significantly more expensive. What we suggest all families do, no matter what income base they have, is to fill out what's called the free application for federal student aid. Hopefully, especially those of you, if any of you, well, I guess you're all parents of juniors pretty much, but hopefully you've heard of that or you will be hearing about that. At University of Arizona, many departments offer their own scholarship money, and one of the criteria is that a student has to have a FAFSA on file. So that's something that you'll want to think about. At the University of Arizona, every student who applies is automatically considered for what's called the Arizona Excellence Award, and those now range from $2,000 to $15,000 per year, and they're annually renewable. Then we also give nice scholarship packages for anybody who's a National Merit Scholar or a National Achievement Scholar, which are African American students, and then also our National Hispanic Scholars. Another thing you want to keep in mind, I would think, is when you're looking at where you want to send your student, usually a student, at least at University of Arizona, they'd live on campus that first year and then move off campus. And cost of living in a lot of places, as I'm sure you know, is a lot cheaper than living here in California. That's something else you want to think about.
Not being a true UC representative, I don't want to give any statistics on how many students are receiving financial aid, but I know the UC system highly encourages the use of FAFSAs. Also, with the UC online application, there are 7 different categories of scholarships that each have a vast array of different things that might be useful for students to just at least apply. Being a large public institution, we range around $22,000 to $25,000 per year, but each school is different, so I recommend doing research as to each of the UC schools, but we do recommend filling out the FAFSA and highly researching the different scholarship opportunities that are available through the UC system.
How important is the interview in the admission process? And if you don't have an interview, will that jeopardize your chances?
This is just for George Washington. We really highly value the interview, especially if a student is not able to visit campus, because it is demonstrated interest. It is the only part of the application where you get to have a face-to-face experience with somebody who is either an alumna or an alumnus of the institution, or someone like myself who actually works for the university. And as a regional representative, I work with about 100 alumni out here in California who do interviews, and I spend a lot of time with each of them. And when one of them in their evaluation just raves about how a particular student will contribute and is the perfect match for the GW experience, that says a lot. And it can be that one thing that does sway a decision when we are looking at 2 students that are very similar. So I would say if you have the opportunity to interview, take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think you have to ask a couple questions. Is the interview informative? Is it evaluative? Are they alumni interviews? Are you interviewing with a member of the admissions staff? We've just begun an alumni interviewing program that we're piloting in Chicago, San Francisco Bay Area, and Houston. And while certainly not mandatory, it is a great way of showing demonstrated interest, which is very important to Emory, and we're very public about that. They're informative interviews. It's a great way for you to come and I think interview the school as much as you're being interviewed. It's more, we're thinking of it as more of a conversation, but it's a great way for us to collect a little bit more information. So I think if you're going to consider interviewing, you've got to really be prepared again to talk about yourself and be prepared to talk about the institution that you're applying to. to be reflective and go in there just having given thought to the impressions that you want to leave. And I think that's the same for any of the kind of subjective opportunities in this process, whether it's an essay or an interview. I don't think a great essay or an incredible interview will ever overcome a weaker academic record in this process, but I do think they often become deciding factors when they're done poorly. And so you've got to be prepared. You don't want to go into an interview without having given much thought to what you want to say. But I think while you're there, it's every bit your opportunity to find out more about the school. You're going to have 20, 30, 40 minutes with someone who is very closely connected to the school, whether they've gone to school there or they work for the school, and it's a great way for you to help, I think, yourself figure out if it's the right place for you as well.
Large public universities, just based on the sheer volume of applications, the interview process is not, an interview is not part of the process. However, there are other ways that you can demonstrate interest, such as going to the university and visiting, making connections with alumni or making connections with people who work in the office, and establishing a relationship. That can factor in, especially if a student is on the borderline for getting in.
We don't require the interview as well, but like Doug was saying, the personal statement isn't going to trump the academic background of students, but it is a great way to give your application a voice, and that's where you can truly express your interest and express the things that you can bring to the university. So using that as a way to make yourself not just some data on a paper. So.
Do you guys have other questions for us?
Are you excited about going to college?
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Just trying to get through the whole application process. I'm applying to 3 different early actions. So this weekend, 5-day weekend, 6 essays. So working on all my applications. So that's definitely a little stressful, but I'm excited. It should be fun.
I've got 2 questions for you guys that I think are really pertinent for the parents and the people that I talked to yesterday. One of them is what you and I talked about. I would like, since you have them here and you've got the veritable horse's mouth here, you can hear it directly from them, what is the best advice you can give to parents about their role, especially junior year, but through the senior year? What is their role in this whole process? Because sometimes we're in a quandary, and it goes soup to nuts. We've got some real, the term these days is a Black Hawk helicopter parents. Not only do they hover, but they attack. And then you have people who have this ultra laissez-faire approach. You know, well, I sent them to private school, and I figure they're good enough. They're going to do it for us, and so they're totally hands off. Somewhere in between is the right mix. So could you comment on that?
I've never worked on the college counseling side of this process. I would love to at some point. What I know, and this is just me saying this is not a healthy process for kids. These are 16 and 17-year-olds who are, in a lot of cases, basing their self-worth on where they get into college. And I think that the best advice I could give for parents and family members and anyone who is supporting a student through this process is to let the process be their own, to really help them and encourage them to discover who they are and to find the place that is the best fit for them. And it might not be a place that you've heard of. It might not be a place that that you want them to go. But I think that for self-worth and for a student to be able to really emerge from this process empowered and to have a really healthy college experience, to just sit back and to let them find themselves through this process and to find the place that's really the best match for them. And I do think that from our perspective in admissions, we don't understand the impact that this has on schools and on kids and on families. And I would just say, let your 16 and 17-year-olds find themselves and hang on to their worth as the cards unfold in this process.
I totally agree with what Jill is saying. I do think that it's part of them exploring and figuring out who they are. And I know it's hard sometimes to cut those strings. Or my dad was a college professor, and he used to get angry with my mother. I grew up in Walnut Creek and only went to Davis, and he used to say to her, "When are you going to cut the umbilical cord? It doesn't reach 60 miles anymore." So I think establishing some independence, and this is part of that process as well. Also, for me personally, it becomes difficult when I'm constantly interacting only with a mother or father and the child is not making any effort to contact me. That does concern me, because ultimately it is your child who is going to be experiencing the college process. And once again, so it is that independence. And I know there's the term helicopter parents. We call them stealth bomber parents now. So it's gotten, and I've been in college admissions for a while, it's gotten even a little bit worse. So and trust in the process, trust in your student. I mean, certainly support your students, and maybe, I call it the funnel approach too. So at this point, junior year, try to keep your minds and their minds open and think about where in the country they want to go perhaps. Some of the things that have already been discussed, public versus private, large versus small, all of these kinds of things certainly factor in, but ultimately it should be your child's experience, because they're the ones that are going to be going to college, not you, even though you'll be supporting them hopefully through the process.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes funny when families come to visit campus, it's hard to figure out whose college search it is, you know, and but I think it's important. I think the reason this whole enterprise works is because we believe in young people and that there's the right school out there for everybody, and that you do have to do your research. And I think as a parent, you have to be supportive and encouraging and helpful, certainly to some degree. But I also think that, like my colleagues are saying, that you have to really let the students begin to figure out what is best for them. You have to use the resources that they have. Dave and his folks are incredibly valuable to you all because they really know your students, and they have daily conversations with them to figure out what's best. But I think you have to listen to the students, listen to what they want, allow them to justify their reasoning, and then be encouraging and supportive. There's nothing worse as an admission person when you pick up the phone and you literally have a parent that's pretending to be the student saying, "We're filling out the application, we're doing this," and it's it's frustrating and depressing, and I think really allowing your student to own the process when you visit the school, allow them to come up to the desk to check in themselves, to fill out their own information on the information card. It amazes me how infrequently that happens, but I think empower them in this process, and then they're going to be ultimately happy, which I think then you'll be happy and very successful.
I just wanted to say a quick word on my parents' role in my process. Well, my going to college has always been sort of it's my deal. I can pick where I really want to go, and planning out my trips, which schools I want to visit. I think that's definitely the kids' initiative. That it should be the students' initiative to try and figure out where they want to go. But what's really helped me, especially this fall, is I think your parents are hugely important, because I tried to start doing some of the busy work application stuff by myself and doing all the research, and it's so time consuming and so difficult when you're a full-time student, especially at Stevenson. We have all these hours, and weekends are filled with games, and it's so busy. So I think definitely help, maybe assign a task to your parents so that they do have something to do and they'll feel like they're a part of it. I think they can definitely help research, some of the stuff on your resume and help figure out where that's going to go on your application, and talk a little bit about that, because I think that's important. And then also just making sure that they're going to do all the financial aid stuff, because we can't really do that. And the other thing is, I've told my parents they're the ones who are going to look for all the scholarships. I don't have time to do all that. So just kind of designating them and giving them a little bit of something to do, and then you'll be able to write all the essays and all the paragraphs and all that fun stuff. But that way they're a part of it, and it really saves a lot of time, and they can help do the financial aid and scholarships and all that.
I think one thing that's really important for the parents to do is to encourage your students, your children, as they go through this process, to keep notes, to really be reflective. If you go and visit a school, or if they do an interview, or if they have a conversation with somebody, to write down, to hold them accountable to writing down what they liked and what they didn't like. And I think it'll be a great tool for them as they go back and consider, which schools to apply to and which ones ultimately to enroll in.
Well, I want to thank you for your participation here. I want to thank the panel, both the students and the professionals here. We would like to invite you to stick around to ask questions of our students or the panel, or if you have questions about some of the SAT things. And I would also invite you to come and make an appointment with me after we get back from the Southern California trip. And thanks for being here this weekend on Parents Weekend. Enjoy the rest of your stay here. Thanks.